The voice was soft, just a wee sound, like a kitten mewing for its mother, yet it echoed in the great dark green forest through the tall conifers. The moon heard the voice and shined her light down into the mossy bed where a tiny and ever so pale babe blinked and then grew silent. The fairies were the next ones to hear the voice. It was the night of the fairy moon, and the two fairies were gathering jasmine flowers to wear as bonnets while they danced in the fairy ring. Stopping in mid-flight, they listened to the silence. "Did you hear it?" said little Heather. "Yes," said Tulip, "I'm sure I heard it. But from where did it come?" "The stream, perhaps, near the elfin oak. Come, Tulip, we must investigate, even though the elfin bog is not our domain." "But the elves might try to catch us," said Tulip, looking a bit worried. "I say," said Heather, "that we must take that chance." The two fairies flew to the spot, and sure enough, under the old, gnarled elfin oak, amidst the lilies of the valley on a bed of moss, lay a babe with the most beautiful face the two had ever seen. The babe's eyes were lavender blue like periwinkle, and the lips soft pink like rosebuds in the snow. The babe's hair was as dark as night, and it fell in ringlets over the lovely forehead. "See how pale it is?" whispered Tulip. "Do you think it is a human child?" "Perhaps so," said Heather softly, so as not to be heard by the elves or gnomes that she thought may be asleep nearby. "But why was it left in the forest? Did the mother not know there are hungry beasts who prowl here at night?" The babe looked with eyes wide at the two fairies. Suddenly the babe reached out a hand to touch them, but they were quick to flit out of reach. "We must consult our queen immediately," said Heather. "I shall go, if you will remain here." "Yes," said Tulip, "but hurry, please." The fairy sat upon a leaf nearby the baby's face and whispered, "Who would leave you here all alone?" The child looked at Tulip and made a sound quite like the cooing of a dove. Then it smiled sweetly. Very soon the queen, along with several more fairies, arrived, bringing a basket with them. The basket was woven with flowering vines and would make a perfect cradle for the babe to be carried in. "We must hurry," whispered the queen. "Let us put the child inside and take it to a safe place." Some of the fairies lowered the basket to the ground, while the others lifted the babe into it. The baby cooed and giggled at the attention it was receiving. "Shh, little one," said the queen as she stroked the velvety brow of this most beautiful child. Jasmina, the queen of the fairies, was very old and very wise, although her form looked young and lovely. She had lived in the forest since the very beginning of time, and during her reign as queen, she had seen many changelings left in these woodlands. A changeling was a poor little soul who had been marked by the dark fairy queen. The mark was always in the form of a large black mole on the newborn's face. Whenever human parents noticed a mole, they became frightened and felt certain that the evil fairy wanted their child for herself. They would not dare to displease her. So sadly, the father would take the child deep into the woods and leave it there to face its fate. The child would no longer grow as a human being, but would slowly change and become gnome-like, living underground with the rest of the Dark Queen's subjects. The Fairy Queen could see, as she lifted the worn blanket away, that this child was perfect in every aspect. She was a perfect baby girl, dressed in a light gauze gown frayed at the edges. The only sign that anyone had cared or even loved the child was the narrow blue ribbon that was loosely tied to one wrist. Just as the fairies were about to leave, the screeching voice of another fairy sliced through the night air. "What is this you are stealing? This is my domain. I believe that gift was left for me." The Dark Queen swooped down to get a look into the basket. Her wings were ragged and bat-like with claws at the tips of them. Her face was riddled with warts, and her nose resembled the beak of a vulture. Her gnarled fingers grasped at the blanket, but before she could touch the child, the Fairy Queen flew into her and pushed her away. The Dark Queen screeched again, "Give me my due!" and a terrible voice caused the child to begin to wail in fear. Suddenly, a thunderous voice echoed through the trees, making them tremble. "Stop this at once," the voice bellowed. It was the spirit of the great forest. He had heard the commotion and knew that he must intervene. "Mighty spirit," said the Fairy Queen respectfully, "this child is no gift to be hidden away underground. This is a lovely human flower who will need sunlight and care to flourish. We fairies will give her that care." "No," interrupted the Dark Queen, who was jealous of her beautiful rival, whom she suspected was the forest spirit's favorite. "It was left for me. I was the first to hear the little wretch," she lied, "and I have come to claim it." "Be still, both of you, while I ponder this." The spirit of the great forest ruled the woodlands, and he was more powerful than all of the fairies put together. He was a benevolent spirit who cared for all creatures, even the humankind. Finally, he said, "I shall give you both a wish for this little being. Then I will make my decision as to whom she will live with. You may speak first, Jasmina." "My wish for the child," said the Fairy Queen Jasmina, "is that she will be blessed with a spirit as beautiful as is her face, and that her kind heart will know great joy and true love." "It shall be," said the spirit of the great forest. "Now, Zeshte, you may speak." The dark face smiled a cunning smile. "Yes, the child will be beautiful and kind beyond compare, and all of that nonsense. But she shall be called Journey, for my blessing is a curse. She shall wander forever, looking for her true love, but she will not know what she is seeking, and though she may find love over and over, she will not recognize it." The horrid, cackling laughter echoed among the trees and bit into the very heart of the spirit of the great forest. She disappeared then, in a puff of acrid green smoke, to conduct her wicked mischief elsewhere, but for the few moments her laughter lingered on the air. All of the fairies looked distressed. "Never mind," said the spirit of the great forest, "for I have one last wish for her, and it, like yours, Jasmina, shall be a blessing. Indeed, 16 years from this very day, she will make a long journey, and if she is brave and kind, and if her spirit is as beautiful as is her face, she will be blessed, and at her journey's end she shall find her true love, and she shall finally recognize him. But she must know nothing of what we have spoken this day. Now, good fairies, teach her all that you know of flowers and herbs, and healing potions and spells and song and dance, and all that she will need to know along her way. She will experience the cruelty of others, and sorrow, and loss, and heartbreak, and through it all, she must be strong and brave enough to fulfill her quest without even knowing what it is," said the voice of the spirit of the great forest, faded into the whispering aspens. "Well," said the Fairy Queen, "we must use these 16 years wisely," and with that the child was carried away to the safety of the good Queen's domain. The child called Journey grew and flourished. Her skin remained as pale as the white jasmine flower, but for the color of pink roses upon her cheeks and lips. And she was as sweet, too, as the scent of roses, which seemed to linger around her. Her black hair fell in long, shimmering waves down her back and past her small waist. She was tall and slender, and her step was quick and light. Hers was a beauty beyond compare, in both body and spirit. In those 16 years, Journey had eagerly learned all that the fairies had to teach her. Those years seemed to scurry by like frightened mice, and too soon, the day she was to leave arrived. "But where shall I go, dear friends?" asked Journey, trying hard to hold back her tears. "The Queen must tell you that, my dear," said Heather tearfully. As they said farewell, they each kissed her cheek. She could see the tears glistening in their eyes and said, "Please do not cry for me. I am not afraid." But a tear slipped out from the corner of her eye because she knew she would miss her wonderful friends, her lovely Queen, and her forest home. All of her things were carefully packed into a beautiful tapestry satchel. Over the years, each of the fairies had worked on the satchel with loving care. It had been woven with vines and flowers of every color and fragrance to remind her of home and friends. Inside were the vessels which contained her herbs and potions. Queen Jasmina was the last one to say farewell. She accompanied Journey to the edge of her domain and said to her, "When you need a warm wrap, just reach inside your satchel and it shall be there. All you will ever need shall be there. I cannot tell you where you should go, only that you must be brave and that you must follow your heart, even though your destination may seem unclear." "But what am I seeking, dear Queen?" "It is not for me to say, my dear one, but I assure you that you will, at last, recognize what you are seeking when you see it. And know this, our love goes with you, and you will never be alone." The good Queen wished to tell Journey of the spirit of the forest's last blessing, but did not dare, for to do so may have broken her own good spell. And so Journey set off with the satchel on her back. She knew that it contained all that she would ever need, and yet it was no burden at all, for it was as light as if it were empty. She walked along the stream that ran through the deep forest, and at last the face of the moon was reflected therein. Feeling sleepy, she set down the tapestry satchel and used it as a pillow. Soon she was sound asleep. She was wakened by a bowshot hitting the tree that she lay under. Suddenly a great stag leapt from nowhere, it seemed, and nearly trod upon her. His large brown eyes held the look of terror, and he panted as though he had been chased relentlessly. Journey jumped to her feet. "Do not fear," she whispered. "I shall hide you." Then she reached into her satchel and drew out a gray mist. It was just what was needed. Quickly, she threw the mist onto the stag, covering him completely. The sound of clumsy running feet came nearer and nearer. "Where is he?" a gruff voice rang out. "Ah, my arrow," the man said as he approached the tree. Then seeing her, he said, "What? Alas, what brings you here to this hunter's woods?" Journey stood tall, even though his size dwarfed her. "I am traveling through these woods this day, sir." "Then have you seen the stag I pursue? Surely he was near you, for I'm certain my arrow here nearly found his heart." "Indeed, sir, I did see a stag," Journey replied, "but he seems now to have disappeared into the mist." "Yes, I see that it is misty where you stand. Oh well," he said as he pulled his arrow out of the tree. "There will be time again to have his antlers in my hand and his heart upon my plate." With this he laughed and turned to go. "Take care now, miss," he said as he walked away. "This is a perilous place for a young lass." When the footfalls could no longer be heard, Journey lifted the mist and put it back into her satchel. The stag rose up to his full, glorious size. He spoke in a voice deep and rich, like the fragrance of autumn. I shall serve you now, and for as long as I am able. With that said, he lowered his body down and asked her to climb upon his broad back. Where shall I take you? Said the stag. I am called Journey, she replied, and I am a vagabond. I wander with no real destination, but I would be grateful for your strong back and good company. So take me where you will. And to herself she thought, I feel as though I am following my heart, for it tells me that this magnificent stag is a kind and generous friend. Then she said aloud, What may I call you? You may call me Stag, he said, for that is what I am. So on they went, wending their way through the misty moors. After they had walked a long distance, they came upon a woman whose back was bent as she carried a bundle of sticks. She was old and shriveled and seemed far too frail for such a load. Might we help her? Journey whispered into the stag's ear. Yes, he said softly, I will take her burden. The old woman gladly gave up the bundle of wood. My, she said, what a fine stag you are. You must come and rest in my village for a time. As soon as they reached the village, she led them to her own small cottage. It was evening and a good time to rest. We will put the bundle here, she said, and pointed to a small enclosure. And you may rest there, stag. She picked a few pieces of wood from the bundle. These will make a good fire to warm my weary bones, she cackled. Now, lass, come inside and I shall make a cup of tea for you. Journey looked into the brown eyes of the stag. He did not speak this time, but merely nodded to her. So she entered the cottage and sat down at a small table. The old woman busily set upon her task of brewing the tea. With her back turned to the girl, the old woman reached for a small jar. She spooned out some tea leaves, and then something else. When Journey had finished her tea, she began to feel very sleepy. The fire was warm and the room felt very cozy. Then she thought of the stag out in the cold. I should be on my way, she said sleepily. My friend will be waiting for me. Just rest a while, my dear, said the old woman. Your friend, the stag, is being well taken care of. Journey did not know how long she had slept. When she awoke, she could hear the old woman speaking. And so it is, my dear, that our village is very poor. Journey watched the old woman's gnarled fingers as she poured more tea into the cup. We have not seen a good meal of meat in many weeks, and again my son came home from hunting empty-handed. Before the old woman had finished her sentence, Journey sprang up from the table and ran out of the cottage. There on the ground lay the beautiful antlers. The stag was nowhere to be seen. Journey thought her heart would break. She slumped down and caressed the smooth antlers, her tears falling on them like warm raindrops. It was only a stag. Why do you cry? He will make the finest meal ever. No, moaned Journey as she arose. Her knees felt weak as she stumbled back into the cottage to retrieve her satchel. Then went to the bundle of wood and took out a long piece to use as a walking stick. And with it she hurried out of the village. It was pitch dark now. She stumbled along, still groggy, from what she decided was a sleeping potion that the old woman had put into her tea. Finally, she could walk no longer. She lay down and closed her eyes. Then, realizing that it was very cold, she reached into her satchel and drew out a brown blanket, which was as soft as fur. With tears still on her cheeks, she fell into a deep sleep. When Journey awoke, the air felt crisp and fresh and very cold. There were high, snow-covered mountains all around her. "Where have I come to?" she said aloud. The fur-like blanket moved suddenly, and looking at it more closely, she realized it was not a blanket at all, but the large arm of a very large brown bear. She quickly drew in a breath. Had she not been brave, she might have been afraid. "You are a bear," she said softly. "Yes," he said, with a great yawn that showed her all of his sharp teeth. His small brown eyes looked into hers warmly as he said, "I shall serve you now and for as long as I am able." "Why, thank you, kind bear," she said. She noticed then how hungry she felt and imagined that he also might be hungry. Reaching into her satchel, she drew out handful after handful of berries and apples and sweet figs. After the two had eaten their fill, the bear stretched and stood up very tall. He then went down on all fours and again motioned her to climb upon his broad back. "I am called Journey," she said, "and I am a vagabond. I wander with no destination. But I shall enjoy riding upon your strong back, as well as your good company. So take me where you will." Then she asked, "What might I call you?" "You may call me Brown Bear," he replied, "for that is what I am." They traveled together happily while seasons changed and changed again, stopping to rest at night and eating the never-ending supply of wonderful fruits and vegetables that came from the tapestry satchel. They drank cold, sweet water from the streams they followed, and occasionally the bear would catch a fish or two for his own dinner. They always avoided villages, for Journey knew the dangers now and did not want any harm to come to her friend Brown Bear. Besides, they had no need of anyone but each other. One day they awoke to Autumn's colorful gown of red and gold. "Look, my friend," said Journey, "the land yonder is golden, and see how it sways." The morning sun shone upon the field of grain, gold as far as the eye could see. As they walked closer to the field, cries of anguish assailed them. "My baby!" a distraught woman cried. "My little boy!" Journey hurried to where the woman had been cutting sheaves of grain. The bear, meanwhile, hunkered down, for he felt the sight of him might frighten the poor woman. "Can I help you?" said Journey as she ran towards the woman's side. "Yes, please help. My baby has swallowed a stone, and I fear he is choking to death." Indeed, the child looked near death, for his face was quite blue. Journey took the child into her arms and held him tightly. She whispered into his ear, "Release the stone now." The small mouth opened, and the stone flew out. Much wailing ensued, for the child was very frightened because of his ordeal. Journey reached into the tapestry satchel and drew out a calming potion. She placed a drop of the liquid onto his tongue, and almost immediately the color returned, and he giggled at the sweet taste of the chamomile tea and honey. "How can I repay you, lass?" the woman said, cradling the now rosy-cheeked child in her arms. "There is no need for payment," said Journey as she smiled and turned to go. "But wait," said the woman. "Please accept this fine grain that I have cut, and may you, one day, have a golden field of your own." Journey thanked her and took a handful of the slender stalks with the golden tassels at the end. She put them into her satchel, and finding Brown Bear once again, she climbed upon his broad back Then they quietly took their leave. Evening came, and in the distance, Journey could see what looked to be a castle, with many tall towers with colorful streamers atop them. As they came near, they heard laughter and song. "Shall we rest here in this joyful place for a while?" Journey whispered into the bear's ear. "If you wish," said Brown Bear. Journey thought for a moment that she had heard a hint of the melancholy of winter in his deep, gruff voice. As they approached the courtyard, they were met by people who were singing and were dressed in colorful attire with gaily decorated masks and ribbons and tinkling bells upon shoes and caps. Musicians played upon harps and flutes and drums as the merrymakers danced in joyous frenzy. A finely dressed man stepped up to the bear and said, "My, what a fine beast you are." Then he laughed and extended his arm and offered to help Journey down from the bear's back. "Come join our merry group, lass. We celebrate the good harvest this day." So Journey took the charming young man's arm and was escorted into a large dining hall. The long table was laden with foods of every description. Silver goblets as well as golden plates were filled with what seemed to Journey to be the most exotic of delicacies. She had never imagined that there could be such a grand place as this. Finely woven tapestries were hung all about the room, and the brightly lit torches that hung on the walls made the colors in them vivid and glorious, much like her own tapestry satchel. "Have a seat, my dear," said the young man, "and we shall eat like pigs, and of the pig that lies before us with the apple in its mouth." Then, with a loud and throaty laugh, he poured a deep red liquid into the goblet in front of her. "And the fruit of the vine shall accompany the swine." Journey's heart began to beat quickly. She sensed danger here and quickly pushed the goblet of wine aside as she rose from the table. But as she turned to leave, the young man took her hands and said, "If you will not eat, will you then dance?" "No, thank you, sir," she said. "I must be on my way, for my friend waits for me." But before she could step away, he had her in his arms and began whirling her around the room. She had never danced with a young man, and had she thought he was a kind man, she might have thought dancing agreeable, but as it was, she found it merely dizzying. "Let me go, sir. As I told you, my friend awaits me." "Your friend, you say? Ah, you mean the fine beast that you brought to me. A splendid gift indeed. He has been well taken care of." "No," she cried at last. "No," she cried as she pushed him away and ran from the room. His churlish laughter followed her. "Come back, my lovely lass, and we shall drink sweet wine and dance the night away." As she reached the huge doors through which she had entered, she gasped, for on the floor lay a bearskin rug. "Oh, no, no, no," she lamented as she fell upon it. The man rushed to her and pulled her away from the still warm fur. "What ails you, lass? It was but a beast. It shall warm my feet and grace my marble floor." And he could barely see through her tears as she fled the courtyard and past the people who had been dancing and singing, but now were stopping to stare at her. "Come back, you silly girl," the young man called. "Do you not recognize a prince when you've seen one? Come back, I command you." But Journey held tight to her satchel and ran away as fast as she could. When exhaustion finally got the best of her, she stopped in a grove of trees, and looking through them, she could see sparkling water. "I must cool my brow," she murmured softly, the tears still in her voice. She knelt beside the water and washed her tear-stained face. "How can I go on," she said, "knowing that I have brought such harm to the friends I've loved so dearly? Am I to wander forever, never knowing what I am truly seeking?" Journey felt very homesick and very tired. "I want to sleep," she said. "I want to sleep forever." Then, as she looked for a place to lie down, she noticed the tall reeds at the shoreline. Something was gently moving there. She parted the reeds with her hands and saw a small boat that was caught up in the grasses. I shall sleep here, she thought, and climbed into the boat. She soon settled down and was lulled to sleep by its rocking motion. When Journey awoke, she found that she was no longer among the reeds, but in the middle of an enormous body of water. As she looked into the water, she saw that her boat was being pulled along by a very large serpent. "Oh dear," she cried aloud, for she had never seen such a huge snake, and had she not been brave, she surely would have been afraid. The serpent, noticing her anxiety, turned to her and smiled, and in a voice as smooth as a silk curtain blowing in a spring breeze said, "Have no fear, for I shall see you safely across." "Thank you, sir," she said. "I shall go with you, for I am a vagabond. I wander with no destination, but I shall enjoy your good company, so take me where you will. Now please tell me, what may I call you?" "You may call me Serpent," he said, "for that is what I am." After a while she asked, "What lies across this water?" "We shall see," said the serpent. "We shall see." Along their way, Journey saw sailing ships of varying sizes, which seemed to be loaded with goods of all kinds. The wind billowed the sails and pushed the ship swiftly along and into a bay. When Journey and the serpent reached a small inlet, the serpent said, "Now step on my back and walk onto the land." His broad back was patterned with lovely diamond shapes, which gleamed in the sunlight. His back was not slippery at all, as she imagined it would be, so she walked easily to the shore. As she put her foot upon the land, the serpent said, "There is a favor I would ask of you." Journey looked into the serpent's brown eyes and could see in them that his heart was true. "I will gladly do whatever you ask of me," she said. "Here in this bay there is a port," said the serpent, "and in this port there is a market, and in that market there is a shop, and in that shop there is a cage, and imprisoned in that cage is one of my own kind. He was stolen from this water by men who would bring him to great harm. I ask that you free him from his prison and bring him back to his home. It will not be easy, for the merchant who keeps him captive will not want to set him free. Will you do what I ask?" "Yes," said Journey with confidence, "and do not worry. I shall bring him back." She hurried along, knowing that all she would ever need would be available to her, and reaching into her satchel, she drew out the clothing befitting of her task at hand. The very next moment she was wearing a gown of silk and velvet, and looking every bit the fine lady. Journey smiled, looking down at the voluminous skirt and at the lovely velvet shawl and slippers. She had never worn a gown such as this before, having only worn her fairy frocks, and as she walked along she noticed how heavy and cumbersome the gown felt. To save a life would be a wonderful thing to do, she thought as she walked on, as gracefully as she could, considering the circumstances. Soon she came to the busy port with its many ships, and then she saw the market, and then the shop, and then the cage. A man, whom she presumed to be the merchant, was pointing into the cage with a sharp cane, saying, "Just look at the pattern of its scales. Would it not make a fine pair of boots for a gentleman such as yourself?" "Perhaps it might," said the gentleman, "if the price suits me." Just then Journey stepped up to the man and screeched loudly, "Oh, how horrid! An ugly serpent!" The merchant quickly turned in her direction and said, "Begging your pardon, miss, But this is the finest class of reptile. Look at the colors on its back. He viciously poked at the snake, who was so large that it filled the cage. Yes, I see, she said. The colors are quite pretty. Perhaps it would make a fine pair of boots for a lady. Ah, yes, said the greedy merchant as he eyed the beautiful young lady with the fine tapestry satchel who stood before him. If that lady had the right number of coins. Journey reached into her tapestry satchel and drew out a handful of golden coins, just what was needed. The merchant's eyes widened and his smile broadened as he looked at the coins and at the satchel. I should like a closer look, said Journey, before I part with my gold. That is, if you assure me that this thing will not bite me. Do assure you, miss. Look, see how docile it is? Perhaps it is sickly, she said, in which case the skin would not do. Oh, no, it is quite healthy. It was caught just a few days ago in this very bay. Saying that, he lifted the latch and poked his cane at the frightened snake. Journey screamed as loud as she could into the ear of the merchant. He jumped back, lost his balance, and fell onto his posterior with a loud thud. At that very moment, the snake sprang from the cage and, guided by Journey's arms, into her tapestry satchel. The stunned man stared at the empty cage and saw that his prisoner was gone. Well, said Journey, what trick is this, sir? I shall not part with my gold to purchase a disappearing snake. And with her nose in the air, she strode away. The gold coins which had fallen onto the ground were quickly seized by the merchant, but alas, when he opened his hand, there were no coins at all, only dust. He stood scratching his head as onlookers jeered and laughed at him. Journey hurried along the shoreline to where she knew Serpent was waiting, and there he was. She smiled as she opened her satchel and lowered it into the water. The rather confused snake looked at her, nodded his head, and slipped silently away. I thank you, said Serpent. Now if you will walk upon my back and step into the boat once again, I shall take you to a beautiful garden. Journey happily climbed into the boat. The sun was warm upon her face. She could rest now, listening to the silky sound of her friend Serpent moving through the sun-kissed water. It seemed to her that she had been sleeping for hours. When she awoke, she saw lovely green trees on which seemed to be an island. She stepped out of the boat and onto the serpent's broad back, then onto soft sand made golden by the last rays of the sun. I must leave you now, said Serpent. He stared into Journey's eyes for a few moments. Then he sadly looked away and slipped into the water. Farewell, my friend, said Journey. Perhaps we'll meet again? Perhaps, said the voice, sounding much like rustling silk. This truly was a garden, for there were flowers and swaying trees as far as her eyes could see. There were birds such as she had never seen, with great fans for tails, which opened and revealed hundreds of blue-green eyes. Their cries were strange and even haunting. As she was wandering amidst the flowers, she heard a voice and turned to see a young, beautiful woman with long golden hair, some of which was tied with green ribbons, which looked to be a type of fauna, and little shells and even a tiny starfish shell. Hello, said the woman in a very soft voice. Hello to you, Journey returned the greeting with a smile. The woman did not smile, however, but looked distressed as she stood wringing her hands. Where have you come from? She said nervously. I have traveled a long way, and to explain would be difficult for me, said Journey in a kind voice. Never mind then, said the young woman. Perhaps you've come to help me. May I confide in you? Journey was willing to help in any way, so she followed the young woman into a lovely cottage. Inside, Journey noticed a table where one plate was set upon a linen cloth. "Do you live here all alone?" she asked the young woman. "No, this is not my home. That water is my home." On a chair in the room lay an exquisite gown that was the color of the sky at sunset. Pale pink fragrant flowers covered the bodice, and a veil as sheer as a dragonfly wing. "Tomorrow is to be my wedding day," the young woman said sorrowfully, tears forming in her pale green eyes. "And I shall surely die. For you see, I am a Selkie. 1 month ago, when the moon was full and luminous, my friends and I shed our sealskins and danced in this garden. And when my friends called to me, I did not listen, for I was enchanted by the fragrance of these flowers." She pointed to the gardenias on the bodice of the gown. "My friends had seen the man sneaking up on where I had left my sealskin, and they became frightened and slipped into their skins and into the water. Before I could don mine, the man grabbed it and put it under his coat. There I was, all alone and trapped, for without my sealskin I cannot swim. He has made me promise to marry him and live as his wife for 1 year, after which he promises to return the skin to me. He has not been unkind to me, but I miss my people and my Selkie life and my own true love, who calls to me when the moon is full. This man has hidden the skin under his bed, and he locks the sleeping room door each day while he's away, and at night I have no way of taking it back, for he sleeps with it under his pillow." Journey looked at the wedding gown and then back to the woman with tears in her pale green eyes. "I shall help you," she said. When the man returned to the cottage to have his supper, he greeted the young woman. "Good evening, my darling," he said as he moved to kiss her cheek. She recoiled from him and would not speak, but instead went straight to the fireplace where a kettle hung and poured a ladleful of stew into his bowl. She filled his wineglass, and when it was empty, and cleared the table when he was finished, but would not utter 1 word to the man who loved her so much that he would risk her hating him forever. Journey observed all this from where she had hidden herself behind the chair that held the lovely unwanted wedding gown. When the man was ready to retire to his sleeping room, he said, "Good night, dear Gwyneth. On the morrow you will be my bride. Only 1 year, my love, and then you will be free to go if you wish." When he turned to open his door, Journey saw in his eyes that he had lied. He did not mean to ever give the sealskin back to her. She also saw that he truly loved the golden-haired woman he called Gwyneth. After the man had closed the door to his room, the young woman took Journey's hand. "My name is not Gwyneth," she hissed. "He has named me that. I am Lorelei. You see how I suffer here?" When Journey heard snoring coming from the man's room, she reached into her tapestry satchel and drew out a strong sleeping potion. Then she crept into his room. She placed 3 drops upon his lids, and in a moment he fell into a very deep, dreamless sleep. Journey and Lorelei carefully pushed and pulled until the fragile sealskin was freed. Then they left the man to his slumber. Lorelei embraced Journey, saying, "Thank you. You've given my life back to me. Keep the gown for yourself. It is a rather pretty thing." Then she ran into the water's edge, slipped into her silky skin, and into the water she dove. Suddenly a seal's head rose up from the water, and in a small, barking voice came the words, "Fare thee well." Journey walked back into the cottage and picked up the gown and put it near her face. The sweet fragrance of the flowers made her feel melancholy. How very sad it was to love and not be loved in return. She thought of the sleeping man who would awake to find his golden-haired woman, whom he so desperately loved, gone. Then she knew what she must do. She reached into her satchel once more and drew out a second potion. Journey walked back into the room and sat beside the sleeping man. She placed 5 drops of the liquid potion on his forehead and said, "Unlock his heart and free his mind of love and memories in kind." Then leaving him, she put the gown into her satchel so he would not see it when he awoke and wonder. Journey walked through the garden and down to the water's edge. She sat down and looked into the moonlit water. "Is this my journey's end?" she asked softly, "here on this beautiful but lonely island? Now I fear that when the poor man awakes, he will try to keep me here, and I do wish to return to my forest home." Then, over her left shoulder, a vision appeared. She turned to see a magnificent black horse with soft brown eyes. "Are you ready?" he said with a voice as soft and as calm as a summer evening. His warm breath held the fragrance of flowers, and as Journey rose to her feet, she could see wings folded in upon his back. "If you are ready, please climb upon my back," he said. "But what have I done to deserve your help?" she asked shyly. "Many things," he replied, "and I shall serve you as best I can. But I have brought 2 wonderful friends to their deaths. It would be dangerous for you, I fear. And because of me, one unfortunate man will awake tomorrow and will have forgotten that he had loved someone." Journey then told the story of the Selkie and the man who had held her captive with his love. "But true love must be given freely. Is that not so?" said the black horse. "Yes," she replied, I believe that is so." Then thought to herself, "Will there ever be a true love for me?" The horse lowered his beautiful black wing, and though not a word was spoken, it was understood that she would go with him. And so it was that Journey climbed upon the horse's back and was carried away. "Where shall I take you?" asked the horse as they rose above the lush green island and up into the night sky. "I am a vagabond," she said. "I have no destination. I must wander forever, it seems, so you may take me where you will. Now, please, tell me, what may I call you?" "You may call me Black Horse," he said, "for that is what I am." Through the clouds across the sky they flew until the moon was their close companion. There they stayed amongst the constellations until the sun turned the land and water golden. They followed the sun over land and sea and saw the most beautiful, wonderful sights while skimming over the mountains and treetops. Where Junie saw that there was drought, she would reach into her satchel and draw out a handful of water, which when thrown onto the parched land became a sparkling stream. When she saw a village that was wanting of grain, she would draw out a slender stalk and fling it to the ground, and there would spring up a golden field. Whatever the need, Journey would fill it. Orchards of fruit and flowers would spring up in the midst of barren deserts, all gifts from the magic tapestry satchel. And time passed. During their flights, Journey and Black Horse had spoken of many things and shared in the wonder of the sights they had seen. At last, the great horse seemed weary, and his wings had begun to weaken. At times, his voice seemed no more than a whisper. "We must rest now, my dear friend," said Journey, "for I see that your wings are becoming tattered and torn." "Yes," said Black Horse, I will take you home now, and we shall rest." "Home?" thought Journey. "How can that be?" They descended upon a lovely land near a large forest of trees. The fragrance of pine and the sound of quaking aspen seemed very familiar to her. Journey could see that her dear friend was greatly in need of rest. As he lay in the fragrant grass, she stroked his head. "Sleep now," she said to him, and kissed his downy muzzle. Then she untied the pale blue ribbon, which he had always worn, from her wrist and tied it into his silken mane. "How very beautiful you are," she whispered, "and how very kind, and how very much I do love you." Then she nestled into the grass and rested her head upon his shoulder, and soon fell asleep. Journey dreamed of her fairy friends, and in her dream the fairy queen spoke to her, saying, "The spell is broken. You are a vagabond no more. The dark queen is gone, banished for her wrongdoings by the spirit of the great forest. Your long journey has come to an end." When Journey awakened, she turned, expecting to see her companion Black Horse, but in his place there lay a young man. "Who are you?" she cried, "and where is Black Horse?" "The spells are broken. Your need to wander has come to an end," said the young man with the warm brown eyes and black hair. "I don't understand," said Journey, getting to her feet. The young man looked up at her and said, "You were blessed, then cursed, then blessed once more. I was cursed by the Dark Queen too, and made to follow you without your knowing me." Then Journey recalled her dream and the Fairy Queen's words, and she began to understand. The young man stood up then and said, "I was the stag, I was the bear, I was the serpent, I was the horse, and when you kissed me and said you loved me, the spell set upon me was broken." As Journey looked into the kind brown eyes of this handsome young man, she knew indeed her journey had come to a sweet ending, for her heart had opened and had embraced his. Then she noticed the pale blue ribbon that was tied into his shiny black hair, the very ribbon that she had tied into the mane of Black Horse. Journey smiled and put out her hand. The young man stepped forward then and kissed her hand. "Will you be mine forever?" he asked. "Will you be my wife?" "Yes," she replied, "for now I know what I was seeking." Then in a soft voice she said, "And now, sir, tell me, please, what may I call you?" "You may call me Evan, for that is my name." And finally, he said, placing his hand over his heart, "This man who stands before you is who I truly am." Suddenly her friends, the fairies, were all around them. The Fairy Queen smiled and said, "At last you have reached your long journey's end, and you have come home to us. We have been waiting for you." Journey smiled a lovely smile. She reached into her tapestry satchel and drew out the lovely gown with the pale pink flowers on the bodice. It was just what was needed. The happy couple were married then by the Fairy Queen, after which a great celebration ensued. And where would they live? Journey drew out the stick of wood from her satchel and firmly stuck it into the ground, whereupon a majestic pine wood cottage appeared. Then she drew out a handful of water and sprinkled it onto the grass. Immediately a babbling brook appeared, the sparkling water kissed by dappled sunlight. Once again she reached into her satchel and drew out the sheaves of wheat and tossed them into the wind, and as they settled to the ground, a golden field appeared at the edge of the forest, and, as all could see, a great harvest was at hand. Suddenly the forest was alive with song. Music from the tiny throats of hundreds of nightingales echoed through the tall, swaying conifers. All at once the voices were hushed. A great and powerful voice broke the silence. It was the spirit of the great forest himself. "Welcome home, dear child," he said. "I have been told by the moon and by the four winds that you have journeyed far and wide, and that you have been kind and brave and wise through all of the trials put to you. Your spirit truly is as beautiful as is your face, and because of this, you shall be forever blessed with the gift of bestowing joy upon whomever or whatever you touch, wherever you go." With this said, the Great Spirit's voice faded into the whisper of the winds. Time has passed, seasons have changed, and still the great forest is a joyous place for all who enter in. So, dear reader, if on your own journey you should come across this deep forest with its majestic conifers that seem to touch the clouds, be not afraid to enter in, for you shall be most welcome, and you shall find both joy and comfort there.